Lunacy by Joe Fiore. It's madness.
Hello and welcome to Lunch Therapy. Lunch Therapy is a show that runs on people power. It is an independent broadcast. It's a podcast. It's a show that you can watch on your TV if you want. Please like and subscribe down below. This show occurs on Tuesdays at noon live and also Fridays at noon live. On Fridays we interview extraordinary people. Today we have Miguel Alejandro Castillo, an interdisciplinary dancer, choreographer, really beautiful person. It's a great treat for Valentine's Day. This Valentine's Day, embrace the lunacy from Joe Fiore. The world is crazy. Why not smell like it too? That's great. Yeah, feel free to make chat comments during the show. Feel free to comment if you watch the show after it airs. This is Lunch Therapy, Interview Friday. I'm gonna get myself a modem. 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 First off, I want to say thank you to all the Patreons. This show is funded by Patreons. If you want to become one, go to patreon.com/JoelMarshall. This is the kind of show where it is a break from all the crap that's going on in the world. You're going to see some incredible people with some incredible minds. You're going to maybe laugh a little bit. On Tuesdays, we even give out a prize. So if you want to be a part of that or you want to fuel that kind of entertainment, please go to patreon.com/JoelMarshall. There are a lot of people out there that want to homogenize everything, want to keep everything down, want to whitewash all your entertainment content. I don't know why there's a movement like that going on right now, but this is the counter movement to that, or a piece of the counter movement to that. We start off the show, every show, by breathing. Let's breathe in some oxygen. Beginning of every show, we breathe. We take 3 deep breaths. Oftentimes, we do this in conjunction with healing vibrations. You know, I'm going to tell you something. I have never been to a sound bath. I'm hoping maybe I can go to one tonight for Valentine's Day. I only experience sound baths virtually through this guy back here and maybe a couple of other sites on YouTube. But it's a wonderful thing. In through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. Let it go. This sound bath is about setting intentions and simplicity. In through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. Let it go. One more breath in through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. Let it go. sound bath experience, go to Healing Vibrations on YouTube. Check them out. Now on to the interview with Miguel. This is going to be such a treat. Let's go. Let's go. Let's take this thing to the next level. All right, here we are. Interview Friday with Miguel Alejandro Castillo. He is an interdisciplinary artist from Caracas, Venezuela. And the first time that I met him, he was a little boy. And he let me and my wife, Kamala, stay on the floor of his room so generously. But now he's a choreographer, a director, an installation artist, an educator, performer. We saw him in this incredible dance piece last week. Just amazing at the Red Cat Theater. It's called Weathering. Wonderful. But he's done so many other things too. He's really into multicultural collaborations. His current research investigates diasporic imagination and future folklore. We're going to have to ask him what that means. He was recently recognized as one of the 25 to watch in the 2024 Dance magazine. Miguel has performed in the U.S., internationally, in the works of Faye Driscoll, Jeanine Durning, Tzveta Kassabova, Springer Xan Burley, Laurel Jenkins, some of the greats that are out there right now. He also was a 2021 danceWEB scholar at the ImPulsTanz Festival in Vienna, which if you haven't checked that out, check out their trailer online. It's just incredible. He's a Fresh Tracks artist and resident at New York Live Arts. Currently performing, like we were saying, in Faye Driscoll's Weathering while developing his own projects. This is the first dancer we've had on the show, so this should be pretty exciting. Let's get on with the show. Here's a little clip from his show Loud and Clear.
Catalejo oxidado y viejo, lo busco a lo lejos. Cuando sale al paso, contento caminando.
Miguel, welcome to Lunch Therapy.
Hello, Joel. Thank you so much for having me here, and happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day to you as well. So great to have you here. Like I was saying, I was just blown away by your performance and the performance of the ensemble that I saw there of Weathering. Can you tell us a little bit about the development of that piece? I understand it was kind of a long process.
Yeah. Well, the piece is called Weathering, and it's by a choreographer named Faye Driscoll, and I have been working with them for about 2 years. And all of the things that I'm saying here are my perspective,
Yeah.
just to clarify. But the process of it, I arrived to a second round of auditions. They had cast a group of 6 people for the very beginning, and they had been doing research for about a year. And after that year of research, Faye opened the audition to cast. She was looking for 1 performer, and there was like this massive audition that many of us went to. And then 5 of us were invited for a week-long residency at Jacob's Pillow, where we were gonna be, like continue the research of the work. And in that week, she really liked the 5 people that were invited. So she ended up casting all 5 of us. So it became a group of 10. um,
How was the
and
development of what was the development process like? I know there's a lot of text that I found this PDF
yeah,
where there was a lot of text and poetry and different themes. How does one go about developing a project like that?
Uh, again, I know that in the year that I
Mhm.
wasn't part of, they worked with an
Yeah.
intimacy coordinator named Yehuda who lives in LA, and they were exploring like where the boundaries are of our bodies, like where does my body stop and where does yours start, and what happens when where those two edges meet.
Mhm.
So there was a lot of like intimacy work happening. And by the time that I arrived, I remember one of the first few exercises, choreographic exercises we did was like looking at a compilation of images. And these images ranged from, pictures of a natural disaster, catastrophe, also like scenes from like maybe queer clubs in the 90s. I remember scenes of also like plastic in the ocean. So we had a compilation of all these images that we would study, and then we would try to yeah, we have this practice called entity shifting inside the work, which is you're in a certain position and then you entity shift, which is to, with the labor of imagination, you place yourself in a different situation, in a different landscape with a different person. And that changes very slightly the affect that as a performer you are embodying. So I could be in this position and I could be seeing somebody. And if I think of that as being my grandmother, that might change the way in which I feel. Or if I think
Yeah.
that's like somebody that I hate, that
Mhm.
changes. So there's a lot of play inside of the shapes that we're in. So we started exploring these images and I started like integrating them into the material that we had in our bodies. And then from then on, we went on this like we went on several residencies. We went to Jacob's Pillow, we went to Jackson, Wyoming, we went to Florida, and then we were in New York, and in this like very intensive, I think there were like 10 days, 10-day periods. We would just like go into the work and then just continue asking questions about what it was. Um,
I want to give a little
it
visual
was
for people here so they have an
yeah.
idea.
Weathering is a symphonically active, luminously living, breathing, leaking sculpture of flesh, materials, breath, sound, smell, that is a study of momentums that are thrusting from just beyond the perceivable. One of the big investigations in the work is how are we touched by sound? How are we impacted by things we're seeing? So the senses are this sort of gateway for us to the world. It's sort of what we have. And so often we think our perception is right and real, but so much of it is learned and habitual. So I think the work is often about making the senses super activated so that we might notice the way we're making the world.
So yeah, that looked like a completely exploratory um, time there. What is it like in the beginning of the piece when you're all frozen in a sculpture and you start to move in the most imperceptible way? What is that experience like? What are you experiencing at that? Do you have an internal monologue going on? Do you have something, to, something that's motivating you? Is it different every time?
It is different every time,
Mhm.
yet the sequence, the my ex how do I explain this? So I have about six movements that I do in the course of 25 minutes. Six shapes that I go through. And from point A to point B, it could be to like, it goes from 10 minutes, then to 7, then to like it reduces the amount of time that happens in between each image. and I have a series of images that I'm engaging with. So, for example, on my starting spot, I clearly see into the distance, and actually remember myself in the studio at Jacob's Pillow and seeing through the trees, through the snow, into the distance. And that's an image that it's choreographed. When the piece starts and when the last words are said and we're all frozen in the platform, that's my starting point. And it's a starting point that does not reflect itself maybe physically, but it reflects itself in my affect. And the exercise of thinking about snow, thinking about process, thinking about distance has already like yeah, it sediments whatever buzz might be happening from being surrounded by hundreds of people and being in a performance mode. And then from there, I think of an angel arriving. I think that I'm seeing my mother. Um, I have it written down, and I could read it to you at
Really?
some point, just because there are so many images that I go through, and
Yeah.
they are choreographed. They are choreographed. So my experience of it is one of sinking into my breath and then allowing things that I have thought of to arise in my imagination and engage with them in such a way that it's not it's like I want the image crystallizes internally, but it never does so externally. So there is a play with what Faye calls indeterminacy, which allows for ambiguity, and it allows for like a perhaps a more open canvas for the audience to be projecting what they are going through onto us.
Yeah. I mean, the audience has
Yeah.
a journey here that is pretty specific too, because the piece starts out so still and it's so quiet in there that as an audience member, even if you move a little, everyone hears it, at least in the space that we were in.
Yeah.
Everyone hears it.
It always happens.
And I felt the overwhelming need to yell something out. I don't know why, but maybe it's just because of all that silence, and because it started out with you all yelling, different words, toes and Kleenex or whatever there was, whatever. There was this cacophony of all you yelling different words, and then complete silence. Just made me really feel like I needed to fill that silence in some way. So it was a lot for me to like go, okay, calm down. You're going to get through this. And then to see the stories that happen between you as there's a giant surface. It's a little like a giant bed. And it starts to turn. I don't want to give too much away of this, but and it starts to turn faster and faster. And as the people come around, the stories change. And you're kind of like, how did that happen just in the spin that, you know what I mean? Like the people come around, you're like, wait a minute, what happened there? And you're following the stories of all the different people until it just gets into this spin that feels like it's almost out of control, like almost like somebody's going to get hurt. And I'm telling you, the feeling that I got at the end of the play was so overwhelming, such an overwhelming emotion that I was literally crying, because something happened to me on a visceral and less than, not an intellectual level as much. I mean, I can intellectualize what I felt about it, that I felt like it was a manifestation of life and we're spinning around on this planet and we're just trying to exist and we're trying to stay on it. But there was so much more there too, that it was just incredible. Not that I don't go to a lot of dance pieces. I think I want to go to more. I haven't gone since I was younger, I guess, to a dance piece. So it was just great. And what got you into dancing in the first place?
Well, first of all, I want to hear what words you wanted to scream at the beginning.
The word I wanted to yell was Kleenex. And I don't know why it was Kleenex. It might have been something that I heard somebody say, because as the words, they started out, they seemed like, and I don't remember exactly, but they seemed like they were body parts. And then they evolved into other things where people were saying like undersea cable, stuff that was like
underwater sea cable.
And so I know now from after the experience, how those relate, or I have an idea of how those relate. And from reading the 20-page PDF, I get that there are themes like global warming. There was also a theme of anosmia, which I actually lost my sense of smell a few years ago. And I was like, it was so important to me to relate to people how awful that is to lose your sense of smell, because it's such a part of your existence. It's like a part of you died, you know? And to hear her talking about that, and also about how when you, I'm talking too much here, but when you breathe in,
Go for it.
you know, when you breathe in a smell, you're not only, you're breathing in particles of other people and other, you know, in the world. So you're taking in actual substance, and then you're experiencing it in a chemical way. And so it's a little different than hearing. It's a little different than sight, because it actually becomes a part of you. And so when that's, and also it's so tied to memory that as it slips away, you start to even forget how it smelled or what that smell was like, you know? So I don't know why I'm on that, but that's one little aspect
Kleenex.
of it. Kleenex, maybe that's my Kleenex. I got
There
to
you go.
clean out my nose so I can smell.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it is, I mean, the piece has that power to like completely disarm both the performer and the viewer, because at the end of the day, the way that the way that the space is set up, you were saying that at the beginning you wanted to say a word, or that every movement that you felt was you know, was like heard by the whole room.
Yeah.
That is because you are also being watched by us
That's
as
the other thing.
performers.
Okay.
You are also being
Yeah.
witnessed in your performativity of an audience member, or like in your existence as a human, because you're so close. You're also lit by the
Oh,
lighting
that's true.
designer.
It's true.
So we as performers, every time that we do a rotation, we get to see the same people watching us, and that creates a relationship, one that ideally it's indeterminate and ambiguous and open to many possibilities. But every time that I would like be there, I was like, oh, I know where Joel is, I know where Kamal is, I know where Liz is, and I have a connection with
didn't
you
even
all, and
think
I have a
about-
connection with you all
Yeah.
inside of the inside of all the parameters that I'm existing inside of, inside of this, you know, this character with a white fleece and a ponytail and a pearl necklace and a, you know, leopard print
Yeah.
shirt.
Yeah.
That
I noticed that when people were coming around that we would make eye contact, which is not, you know, that definitely breaks the fourth wall. But I didn't think about that idea that you know, I got the idea that people were giving us eye contact, but I didn't get the idea. I now realize that we were lit so you could see us. Because a lot of times when you're a performer on stage, you can't really see the people. We also had a friend that we hadn't seen in like a decade who came over to us just before the show, and we were just so glad to be reunited. And so she was sitting over there, and you could see her sitting there with your friends, right next to your friends. And so there was a communal kind of situation going on. And at the end, when you take the I'm going to call it a bed, when you take it around the bed to the different people and you're kind of and sitting with them, it's such a personal, interactive experience that, I mean, you'll never get it with Netflix.
Yeah. No, never.
You'll never get it.
Absolutely never.
In a million years. And also the feeling of that we all saw something that will never happen exactly that way again.
Well, here's the thing, that all of that piece is like choreographed to the dot.
Is it?
So yeah,
even at the end, like when everybody jumps on and they're like, I guess that is. Yeah. So
the only thing that slightly changes order is like who gets dropped off. Like once we've got to a full stop and we do those like final slides.
Yeah.
Who gets dropped off first? That's the only thing that changes. But the rest, everything is
choreographed.
Is choreographed.
How long was the rehearsal process? I mean, I know you were kind of got in the middle of the thing, but how long was it?
How long is the rehearsal process? I don't know how to answer that question, but I know that we went to 4 residencies: Jacob's Pillow, Mansi in Florida, Jackson, Wyoming, New York. And those residencies were perhaps like, I don't know, 10 days, 10, 14 days. And we would go like 8-hour days. So like, I guess what I'm gonna say is that for me, my relationship to time in relation to making and performing this piece is completely warped.
Right.
Completely warped.
You know that
Completely warped.
I was in the Berkshires for a year. And so I was at Shakespeare and Company and doing Shakespeare, and we did a lot of workshops like that. And I just feel like that place is like magical. You know, there's something about that place where Jacob's Pillow is, and you know, all the different arts are there, and there's something out of time. I don't know what it's
Yeah.
like there now, but at the time when I lived there, we didn't even lock our cars. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially during the winter, because winter sets
Yeah.
in, and yeah.
Yeah. No, very, very, I don't know, Joel. I have been one of my favorite. The reason why I do dance, or one of the
Yeah.
main reasons why I do dance, is because I got to see Pina Bausch, Rite of Spring. Are you familiar with that piece?
No, tell me about it.
When Pina Bausch is this choreographer, German, and she created dance theater, and created all these pieces that united theater and word and movement and the sensation of of like the visceral nature of human existence, of like the raw emotions that happen, that you wanting to like slap your best friend because they said something awful, that you wanted to like kiss someone really passionately because you're in love with them, like all the chaos that happens inside of us. And I was studying theater, and a professor shared with me her work, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is what I want to do. I want to like make pieces like this. I want to be in pieces like this. So I kept her work for a really long time, and then Faye Driscoll appeared in my life, and I was like, oh my goodness, doing she's doing something that I recognize in my interest, in my passion, something that is reminding me of the rawness of Pina Bausch with perhaps a more postmodern approach. And I was like, I want to be in this. I want to be in this work. So I just like trained for the audition and showed up, and I met the most incredible. I am disgustingly in love, talking about, Valentine's Day. I'm disgustingly in love with everybody in that team.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy, but you have
Beautiful.
to, and I think part of that is, I mean, how brilliant the casting was. Really, really smart casting. Because it allows us for all of us to have such beautiful and complex emotions about one another, and then we can actually like share and be part of inside a performance. And it also makes touring a lot easier, when you love the people that you're working with.
Are you touring that piece around now?
We're going to Nashville next.
Wow.
Nashville in April. I think it's the 21st through the 28th. And then we go to Europe in June.
And you
Come
also
check it out. Come check it out.
Yeah, come check it out. We'll have to put that in the show notes. The dates and where to get tickets, because it is not to be missed if you're in any of those places. Can you tell us a little bit about your work with the opera as well? Like there's this Prisoner of the State, which I watched that online. It was unbelievable. How did you get involved in opera, and
how did I get involved?
Yeah.
I got involved through opera through a mentor, an artistic mentor, a professor that I had in college. She was choreographing an opera at the Walt Disney Concert Hall. And she was like, Miguel, let's go into the studio and develop some material. So we would like play around, and at the end of that process, she was like, hey, actually, it would be really nice to have you as an assistant in this project. Would you come to LA? And that's when I went in 2018, and I spent about a month being an assistant choreographer. And then from then on, kind of like the doors open into the world of opera. I grew up. My grandparents and my father are like opera lovers. I remember like my first going to the opera when I was like 6 or 7, Elixir d'Amour, and I just remember like falling asleep in the thing.
Really?
When there is Justin Vivian Bond, who is this incredible performer, has this joke of the best part of going to the opera. No, the best part of falling. What is it? The best part of going to the opera is waking up and you're at the opera. um, but anyways, the passion or the interest in this
Does that mean that you fell
interdisciplinary, like,
asleep? What does that
massive.
mean? What does that
Yes,
mean?
yes, that means that I fell asleep.
Whoa, I'm at the opera.
Yes,
That's hilarious.
and
But it's not
so
true.
the interest for this
I
like
mean,
interdisciplinary form.
that
I
this prisoner of the state, which I've got a little clip here so people can see what it is. It is not your traditional. Very powerful political images. I mean, it's just really something. I don't know how much we can show of that, but it's again, it's visceral, like you're saying. It's visual. There's a lot that hits you on a level that is not just music. But music, of course, is a great conduit for emotion because it actually vibrates your body.
That piece is called "Prisoner of the State" and it's by a composer named David Lang, who is one of like the American greatest composers right now. And I had the great privilege of working in it as a choreographer, and also as an assistant director to Elkanah Pulitzer, who directed the show, and it's a modern take on Fidelio. So a woman who disguises as a man to go inside a prison system to free her husband who was put in jail like unfairly. So it tracks that, and it tracks the chorus of prisoners, who was kind of like the main role I had was to work with this male chorus and create those sequences for them, with them. And that was a fantastic project. We got to do it in at the New York Phil, at Geffen Hall. You could see that it's kind of an installation set. We had those like the cages, and it was like a semi-staged, fully staged in a concert hall kind of. And then we got to tour it. We got to tour it in Amsterdam. We went to the Barbican in London. We went to Bruges. Yeah, you got to do this whole tour. And I mean, for me, I in my work in opera, I have gotten to work in with contemporary opera. So the composers that I am most familiar with in my creative work are, Leonard Bernstein, which was who composed Mass, who was the first project that I was part of, and then Prisoner of the State by David Lang, and then more recently I got to choreograph a piece called The Gospel According to the Other Mary.
That's an amazing piece.
By John Adams, and I got to cast my 92-year-old grandmother.
Tell us about that.
This show.
How did that happen?
How did that happen? The piece is set in this shelter for unemployed women, and the director Lisenka Castañón wanted to create this space in a sort of like maybe Caribbean town, women, queer community. So she really wanted to work with an older performer, so that there could be a range of ages inside of this shelter. And we had cast a Viennese actress that kind of couldn't do it last minute. And then I was like, hey, I have an idea. Like, my grandmother is old and it would be amazing. Like, I just see her in the piece. My grandmother is also very Catholic, very like, I could see her connecting to the themes of the show in a way that would reveal something true to all of us as audience and as creators. So she flew from Caracas being 92 years old, and
Wow.
arrived to the opera in Vienna. Without last time she was on stage was when she was 13. She was a politician, so she knows about performance.
Mhm.
And we got to engage with her and with a beautiful cast. We were 12 in total. There were 12 in total for 5 weeks, and we made this show. And in this show, there is a section that is so gorgeous, Joel. It has this whole orchestra, which is 80 people playing this song that is so, so tender. And it's about missing your mother or about seeing your mother for the first time. And we had my grandmother just lay down, downstage right, with a whole group of 170 singers, like a bit further upstage, looking at her, standing up from the floor. So for 6 minutes, all we do as an audience is listen to this most beautiful music and see this 92-year-old woman stand up from the floor. And
It's
I don't
beautiful.
know, it's just so fragile and so beautiful, and everybody cried.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, that sounds great. So many experiences you've had, I mean, already in your life. I mean, tell me something about the Agile Rascal bicycle tour. I want to hear about that too.
yes.
I've got a little clip of them. Just let me just show this. Just something that I ran across in looking at what you do.
Yes.
This is a troupe. Well, they'll tell you. Heck is this?
I can drop my tail off. Just right on the ground, man. Your tail? Yep. I go over there, and my tail stays here.
This creature has figured out a way to utilize all that discarded plastic.
And were they thinking of you then?
That's so they ride around, you ride around on bicycles around the country and do performances?
We do.
Oh
We
my
do.
gosh. So,
Yeah.
how does that happen? And what are the performances like? How do you develop them? Do you have a tour manager? When does it happen? Yeah.
Well, right now the company we're going now we are changing the model a little bit,
Uh-huh.
but the idea originally was that a group of artists would get together and they would develop a play based on some environmental issue in relation to a specific community, and then we would tour it in that specific place. And the company has done several tours. The first one was very ambitious and it was across the country. So the group started in California, created a play, and then traveled it all the way to New York. I think the second one was in Montana, and it was about mining, and they did the tour just around Montana. The tour that when I joined the company was in 2018, and we went to Florida, and we developed a piece at the Everglades, and it was a piece that looked at like looking at Florida with like a few inches of water in, so like a swamp, like a very, very swampy, like in the thick of climate change. And we created the piece at the Everglades, and then we would pack, we had lights and we had like costumes, and we packed them on our trailers, and we went and we did a loop of around 1,200 miles, like all the way up to Gainesville, down the Keys, back to Miami, back again to the Everglades, and it was so challenging,
I
so
bet.
challenging,
I
so
bet.
challenging.
And where would you
Uh,
sleep and where would you perform? And did you have
we
booked
would
gigs?
the way that the company works is that each of us would pick a town that we would be performing in, and we would be kind of like the producers of that town. So we would either contact like a public library or like a local theater or the playhouse or the plaza or whatever we thought would be interested in presenting us. And then we would also coordinate the housing. So sometimes we would I don't know, reach out to a church, or we reach out to the biking community, or we reach out to a brewery. So we stayed in all different kinds of places, or
Mm,
camping.
mm.
Uh,
and we got to perform this piece in, like, towns, like cities like Miami, and also tiny rural towns in Florida.
Wow.
And the
And
idea is to bring.
how was it received?
How was it received? Differently in different towns, but
Yeah.
overall, there is something quite magical to have a troop of bikers come through your town, and they're like,
Yeah.
we were with like these big flags, and we were a traveling theater.
Yeah.
And I think that regardless of what that is, the sense of newness and possibility, and of like, who are these people visiting us? Like, what are we gonna do together? So I would say overall, like, really positively, really positively. Yeah, there are just a few things that are in relation to the politics of climate change, and that can bring some maybe like
Yeah.
not so welcoming messages.
Hmm.
But overall, it was a fantastic project. We also did one in Massachusetts and Vermont, and then the most recent one, which is when the company just changed the model, is the artistic director, Dara Silverman, lives in Philadelphia.
Hmm.
So now we're thinking of, what if the play happens in just one spot? So we were part of the
Hmm.
Fringe Festival this past year, and we created a play based on the killing of a local biker, a delivery man who was killed by a car. And his story is really beautiful, like community organizer, and we just wanted to like kind of like pay homage to his work and bring attention to how like how biking is a very powerful method of transportation, and how cars are like this really dangerous machines.
Yes.
uh
Very dangerous and polluting for the
Very
most part.
dangerous and polluting.
Yeah.
So we created this piece, and we performed it and this time around the audience joined in bikes. So it was like we as opposed to the bikers touring and then like hunkering down and showing work, we
Mhm.
had the whole audience in bikes going with us through the landscape of Philadelphia, seeing how all of these scenes evolved. And that was also a very moving piece. And I certainly like this, although the other model is very exciting and very beautiful. It was really hard to fund and
Yeah.
really hard to organize. So this feels a lot more manageable, and yeah, I'm
That sounds
excited.
great. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you about diasporic imagination and future folklore. Can you tell us
Mm.
about that, and maybe about the projects that you're working on now?
Yeah, this started, well, I'm from Venezuela, and I have been in the US for the last, 12 years. And of course, there are all these thoughts that come about, what does it mean to be a foreigner, and what does it mean to become in a foreign context? Who am I? What am I in relation with? What do I miss?
Yeah.
And so my kind of like my solo work always has an element of autobiographical. I would even say like autoethnographical. Uh, and recently, in New York, there was this group of artists that created this space where this Mafer Bandola, who is an incredible Venezuelan musician. She's one of the best bandola players. And she created this space called Pipiris Nights, which
Mhm.
happens at this bar called Barbes. And I went to this place, and they were playing joropo. And joropo is the music that comes from the place where my grandmother is from the plains from the Llanos.
Mhm.
And it's music that I grew up listening to in the city and in my grandma's house. And I was all of a sudden listening to it in Brooklyn. And it blew my mind. It blew my mind to be in that space. And then I got to see people from all over Venezuela, like from Caracas, from the Llanos, but from everywhere, claiming that as ours. Like in uh what in Venezuela felt very codified to a specific region.
Mhm.
Once that region, or once you live the country, you
Yeah.
claim more as yours,
Oh,
in
yeah,
a
yeah.
way.
Right, right.
Um,
Interesting.
so Joropo, I remember, in Caracas, people would make fun or would like look down upon this genre because it's from the rural areas. And I was like, I love this, and I'm gonna listen to it. My dad listens to it in the car. I'm gonna do it also. And there would always be this tension of like, no, that's not from the city.
Mhm.
And then I just saw that not happening. Like when you are abroad, everything that
Yeah.
reminds you of home, you're like, okay, great.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and I started seeing people dancing it, and I was like, that's not the way you dance it. But also it is the way you dance it because you're here dancing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And then it just made me, it just sent me on this loop of like, what is now we are like 8 million Venezuelans in diaspora all over the world doing this, like bringing what we know of our folklore, bringing what we know of our culture and sharing it with people. And in a different context that unites different contexts of Venezuelans. And I think in that exchange, the folklore itself changes.
Hmm.
Um,
Wow, that's so
so
interesting. So interesting. It's like diaspora basically means you've left your country, right?
yeah,
There's a lot
it
of
is.
people leaving the country. And the folklore changes just like our history changes as we look back on it. But also your folklore changes, which I guess history is folklore.
Yeah,
That's
it
what that
is. And
is.
we have all these African diasporic forms. We have drumming. We have like, I mean, jazz. Like
Mhm.
so much of it is about a movement of people traveling with all they know and arriving to a different place and then sharing it and then allowing it to morph. So I was just really, really curious about this. And I
Yeah.
was like, what is future folklore? Like if I
Yeah.
if I place myself a Venezuelan inside diaspora, what's gonna happen with all the things that I grew up seeing and that I know? So that started to become like a pretty strong grab of my choreographic and artistic attention. So I worked with this musician and visual artist named Daniela Barbarito, who is an incredible musician based in Spain, and she's been my friend for forever. And I was like, hey, I'm exploring this. And I also see that you're exploring it in your music. You're also thinking of very traditional. We were in choir together and we learned all these like folkloric songs in choir, and she was using some of that and making them a bit more like, yeah, like modern, or like mixing it with nostalgia, or like placing it in the context of being outside of Venezuela. So we got together and we took three different folkloric festivities from Venezuela. Diablos de Yare, which is this like people wearing this like massive like deviled heads
Yeah.
to celebrate Corpus Christi. We also
Hmm.
took Calypso del Callao in which is like this more, yeah, it's called Calypso, and it's more like Caribbean,
Yeah.
Trinidad, and another festivity from the Andes. And we like, what if all these three festivities had to travel up to New York? When they arrived, what would it be? And we created this. I'm just gonna show you because I have them here.
Oh, wow. Look at that. It's
Um,
beautiful. We have a mask similar to that in our house that we got from Venezuela.
yeah.
Kamala wanted to bring it, and I was like, how are we going to get this home? We ended up putting it in this huge box.
Yeah, they take a lot of space, and I have this one
Yeah.
in my room,
Oh, it's
thinking like how.
great. Oh, yeah. Look at that. Ah, that's so great. I love that. I wish I had ours. Put it on too.
Um,
Ours is hanging in our house. Wow.
yeah,
Well,
find a
that
good
must
place
be.
for it.
So, what are you doing with this show, and where are you going to put it on, or have you
Well, this
done
show
it?
we presented at New York Live Arts 2 years ago, and I'm now
This
I
is
want to
the
do
what
like
we had at the beginning of the show
this is what you
with the
well at the beginning of
ukulele,
the
and
show, you had a reel that included some of that. It also
included some of
included
it.
something else,
Ah,
which is a piece called Wild by Laurel Jenkins.
ah.
And but yeah, the plan, what I would like to do is this feels very personal and it's a duet, but now I want to create a bigger piece that involves the larger Venezuelan community in New York, and have a whole evening where we look at like cultural representations of Venezuelan folklore from like the 90s or the 80s to right now, and
Mhm.
then we jump ahead to 100 years and imagine
Oh,
what
that's
that
the
what that
future folklore. Future
yeah,
folklore. I love that.
folklore. So
I
We
mean,
will see. We will see.
as
I'm working.
performers, we all kind of do that where we, you know, we bring whatever experience we had in our life, because most of the time you're the only one that had that experience. You have people, you know, you have spouses and parents and people all along the way in your life, but you're the only one that had that experience. So you're the accumulation of all that experience that is unique to you. And as a performer, we kind of present that in various different ways, whether we're a singer or a comedian or an actor or a dancer. You are unique because of your experience. And so it's sort of sometimes when you present that, you may feel like it's morphed and maybe it's almost a lie. You know what I mean? But is it, or is it just your experience and that's what it has evolved to, you know?
Yeah.
So that's
A
kind of,
combination, perhaps a combination.
yeah,
You
perhaps
know, we,
combination.
as performers, or at least as dancers, well, we exist in fiction. That is a fiction that exists in the now.
Yes.
And in that coalition, we get to be in communion with a witness. And I think that's what creates like this, I don't know, potentiality of change and transformation.
Do you ever go back to Caracas and perform?
I haven't, but it's a dream of mine. It's a
Mhm.
dream of mine. Yeah, I haven't performed in Venezuela in a really, really long time.
Well, you have a lot of life ahead of you.
Yes.
There's
Grand,
so much
grand.
for you to do, and you've done so much already. It's just astounding. It's really astounding.
Oh,
Do you
thank
do you ever feel overworked, or you just love your work so much that it's just
you.
effortless?
Both.
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 Yeah.
Both. It's just, the trying to get. I feel overworked by the administration of it.
Mhm.
Like being a freelance artist and like a producer, you're like writing grants all the time and you're like asking for funding and you're doing this. And that's the part that feels tiring. But I could be in rehearsal forever.
Yeah.
Once I'm in the studio or in a theater, I become so obsessed and so like engulfed by whatever explorations we're doing that I just love it so much. I just love it so much.
You've inspired me, for sure. I before the pandemic, I was taking tap dancing, and I was also going to this dance class that was way over my head, but I just kind of throwing myself in there, and I felt so good afterwards, and or during, maybe not before, but during and afterwards, I felt so good that I feel like I got to get back out there because it's just moving your body is so important. I mean, besides exercise, moving your body in an expressive way
Yeah.
is so
I mean,
important.
it brings us to the now. It brings us to like, I don't know. There is so much going on. There's so much going on in the planet. Like
Yeah.
we're in the thick of something absolutely like insane. And just to be able to go to your body and sweat a little bit and feel the rhythm of something, you're like, oh, I'm alive and there is power here and I have agency and I can make decisions and I can have fun. Uh, so,
I
and
go
I
back to
think
that
so
PDF
much. Yeah.
about the show and about
Yeah.
how we are in something that is a catastrophe, I think is what she said. We're
Yeah.
going through this seeming catastrophe and we're seeing it happening right in front of us. And there is a lot of us, there's no sense of urgency,
Yeah. Yeah.
even though we see it.
Mhm.
So yeah, people have to go see that show of yours or all of your shows. I'm going to make sure that
Yeah.
I put as
Everybody
much
can.
information in the show notes for people to find, you know, where you're performing, because it's super inspiring. And I think a lot of us in our daily lives don't get a chance to see this stuff. Thankfully, you invited us to come. Liz was going, she invited us, and I'm like, how am I missing this? And that was performed at my school's theater. I went to Cal Arts, And I'm like,
Okay.
why am I not going down to this thing? It's not even, I could probably get a deal.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what am I, in life, sometimes we're missing out on the sublime that's going on around us. So thank you so much for being on the show. Can you tell us a little bit about what you envision? How you envision things? Do you make dream boards, or do you have any kind of process that you do to spark your creativity and
Yeah.
look into the
Well,
future?
thank you for inviting me,
Oh
Joe.
yeah.
It's been such a pleasure to be here. Uh, I do. There are some ideas that are just so insistent that you have to let them live.
Mhm.
Like there are just sometimes that you just get this thought and then you're like, oh, this is one of those. I call them the inevitables. That
The
they will just
inevitables.
they just they just need to make themselves
Don't you feel
materialize.
like sometimes people have inevitables and yet they don't let them materialize?
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
It's like one of the greatest crimes we commit on ourselves, I think.
It is. It is. So usually what I do, I at the core of what I do is image. Like I really work with image and I would have an image and I just start researching it and I print stuff, I write on my journal, and then I just start talking about it.
Mm.
I feel like for me the word is one of the first ways of materializing an idea. So right now, for example, I'm working on a couple of projects. One of them is called El Momento, and it's this desire that I have to collaborate with Times Square cartoon characters to
Mm.
develop a piece that talks about personal narrative, immigration, and the cost and value of the American dream.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that one. And the way that I have been working on it is just been purely archival. Like I have been researching like what are all the newspaper articles that have been written about costume characters in Times Square? Where do the costumes come from? Also, I have like interview a few of the performers. So it's like let me just gather all this information and like let me like really understand it. And I have, a folder in my closet where I keep all of that. And then I'm also working on this project, which integrates lap dancing with my anxieties of climate change and social issues, and my expertise in creating images.
Mm.
So I'm working on this project, and this has been mostly this is maybe the first time that I share it in in public. But the idea is to create a platform where I can express those three passions that I have,
Mhm.
and eventually maybe even like a yeah, like an interview program where I lap dance to my interviewees, and then we
No, you're talking about
discuss.
lap dancing, like in
I'm
a
talking about lap dancing.
strip
I'm talking
club.
about that. Yes, strip club lap dancing.
No, it's very happening these days. Did you see the movie Honora? It's
No,
about a
I have
lap
not. But
dancer. You should check it out. I mean, I don't know. It might
okay.
stimulate something for your show as
Yeah, yeah,
well.
yeah. We'll do. But the thing
Yeah.
about it is that there is something about. Well, there's this quote by Audre Lorde that says, "The erotics is a measure between the beginnings of our sense of self and the chaos of our strongest feelings."
Mm. Mm.
And I feel that by combining lap dancing, which plays very much with that measure, like the lap dancer approaches or finds distance, and that creates a different buzz.
Mhm.
Uh, Combining that with lap dancing to a social issue or like something that brings me or the world anxiety, I think there is a potential of finding the beginning of that sense of self of like, oh, this is where I'm placed inside of this larger issue, and this is what I can do. And I can do it also while enjoying, like, pleasure activism comes to
Yeah.
mind,
Pleasure
and
activism.
just
I
like a
love the
you know,
idea of an interview as well. I mean,
yeah. So I might ask you. It's like, hey, you have been doing this for a
yeah,
while. What are some
yeah.
some some?
I'll
uh,
help you out. Whatever you need from
Sweet.
me, let me know. I actually
Well,
did a
thank.
lap dance one time in Las Vegas when I was so uncomfortable about being at a strip club. This is when I was
Uh-huh.
younger. that I just asked if I could give them a lap dance instead. So I did that. And it was, I tell you, it was good. It was a good experience.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Try and give back.
Yes, give.
All right. Well, at the end of the show, we do what's called a dance break. I play a song from a cover song. I've got Joy to the World by Main Squeeze. So we'll just dance it out. This will be the end of the show. I'll play just a little bit of it. And thank you so much for being on Lunch Therapy. Happy Valentine's Day. And
Thank you.
It's great having you. All right. Dance break time. This is that guy's good. Thanks everybody for being here today. This has been Lunch Therapy, Interview Friday. Thank you, Miguel. See y'all next Tuesday.